Hey, so it is day 2, is October 2nd, of watching a horror movie for the 31 days of Halloween. And today I checked out In a Violent Nature on Shudder. And it was actually a movie that I'd heard some things about. I'd heard, positive things. People were anticipating it. Sorry for the crazy hair today. So I was looking forward to it. I saw that it hit Shudder, I believe, last month, and I put it on the list for this month. I was pretty excited to check it out. And originally I thought maybe I would leave it until later in the month, but I was in the mood for it today. And I have to say, it was really cool. It was a little bit different, than normal slasher flicks, which was really cool because, I mean, once you've seen one, you've seen them all, especially when it's like in the woods, camping, whatnot. I don't know how many of you saw any trailers for this, but essentially it's like a Friday the 13th type horror, with that kind of villain, the sort of supernatural, just hulking mass of slasher. Mostly legend kind of backstory, and then it's pretty much just teenagers or young adults being dumb in the woods, getting caught by a killer, that kind of thing. Except the movie is, for the most part, there's very few scenes that aren't, but for the most part, the entire thing is from this killer's point of view. And so really interesting concept, cool way of executing it. I'm not entirely sure. It strikes me as maybe slightly lower budget, not, a huge blockbuster, which is fine. They really seem to save a lot of their budget for the gore, which for those of you out there who enjoy gore in your horror movies, I don't think you'll be disappointed. There are some very creative, slasher kills in this that I think you will appreciate. But the cool thing is the whole thing is really from the killer's point of view, and in scenes where the killer wouldn't necessarily be there or really have a point of view, it was sort of told by having the camera pointed like on an object or in the woods, which was a really neat way to convey different parts of the movie, and kind of giving us a little bit of backstory on the killer, but maybe it's lore, maybe it's not real. There were some things that were predictable, and there were some things, I don't necessarily want to call it a dark comedy because I don't think it was intended to be, but there were some things that were almost comedic, and not necessarily because of anything being funny, but because there was almost this a little bit of tongue-in-cheekness to experiencing a horror movie from the point of view of a killer who doesn't speak, so you're not getting, it's not like, oh, let's get into the psyche of why did this killer snap or anything like that, because it's this hulking mass of killer that doesn't speak, is supernatural, can get shot and get back up, walks constantly when pursuing somebody. And so you have these kind of almost comedic moments because you're seeing the dumb, horror movie victims from the killer's perspective. And there's almost this kind of unverbalized, like frustrated sigh at some points in the film by the killer of like, now I gotta drag this guy all the way over here, or I just heard a voice, there's another guy I gotta kill. In not an outwardly comedic way, but it's just, or there'll just be a sort of moment where you see the killer kind of examining something, and you hear the stupidity of, a teenage argument or the young adult arguments in the background. And it's a cool take on a concept that has been done to death, really. I mean, in the woods horror is so hard to do anything new with anymore, because we have so many entries. I mean, Friday the 13th, for the most part, takes place at, a summer camp, but it's still in the woods, and there's creature features in the woods, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre goes through the woods, and You have The Hills Have Eyes, which is a little more desert, but there's wilderness spots. Wrong Turn, the original, early 2000s outing, and then the reboot, still in the woods. And there's a lot of, I think, fear in the woods because you hear a lot of noises that you don't know what they are. There's animals. They can be big, they can be small, they can be deadly, they can be harmless. When you're in the woods, it's really kind of hard to see, and hear, is that a bear or is that a squirrel? And so it is a very popular setting for horror, but like I said, there really has not been much new done. And it was cool to see a film kind of do something different with it, do something creative with it, and to not feel the need to explain too much. You don't have a lot of exposition. You don't necessarily know if the exposition is true. The characters aren't incredibly developed, which is fine because we're not looking at a psychological thriller here. We're looking at a slasher, and we're looking at a new creative way to do it. And I really think that this is worth checking out. It's called In a Violent Nature. It's on Shudder. It is very slow moving. I will say that. By saying that, I don't mean boring, but it is incredibly slow moving. There's a lot of times where the camera just kind of focuses on something, or it's very slowly panning, or it's letting a scene kind of just unfold. There are not, a lot of jumps. There's not jump scares or things like that. I think the terror more in it is the fact that we're just kind of following the killer along here. We're not really getting that, the kind of character development that you get in the normal slashers where they try to make you like the main characters or they try to make you dislike the main characters. There's bits of dialogue like that. But like I said, there's not a ton of dialogue, and it's mostly just kind of letting you know the basics of what's going on or that they're in this general area. It's not necessarily really, the storytelling is really just following around this killer. But it's also cool because there's some, it's almost like behind the scenes kind of thing. I mean, we've all seen those slashers, and at some point there's always a body discovery of the killer's done something with a body. And as the audience, we're always kind of wondering, like, wait, Jason Voorhees dragged that body all the way across the campground to arrange it in the camp kitchen so that it spooks the final girl? We're seeing that. We're kind of seeing the thought process. We're sort of seeing why the killer's doing whatever he's doing or following him along. And it seems to make a little bit more sense. So it's cool because it kind of just tells a story I don't think we've really heard before. And it's not relying too much on, trying to pull at your heartstrings. And overall, I just think it's very entertaining and it's something new. So if you're looking for something, to kind of, I don't necessarily want to say put on in the background, because if you're not paying attention, you will miss things, and you'll miss things that are cool bits of storytelling or movie making, or cool shots that they've decided to take, or building tension with certain shots that then may pay off, may not. I think we're seeing a lot of really cool things. The last 2 days, checking out Talk to Me, like I said, I gave that 4 stars. That was really entertaining. In a Violent Nature, actually, I'm going to give it, for creativity, it's going to get 5 stars. But I'm going to give it an overall 4, only because the pacing at some points was a little bit slow. It didn't ruin anything. It was just, there were kind of, you'd have kind of tense moments, and then sometimes the tension would be broken by the shot just lingering a few seconds too long. It's not enough to really, take that much away from it, because overall it was very enjoyable, and it was so cool to see something new, see something different. And I'm really enjoying this kind of new take on horror where they give you very little information. I think a lot of the scare is taken away when there's too much exposition, too much explanation, like, why is he supernatural? Is there, like, oh, it's a witch's curse. And I feel like that kind of takes away from it, but it's like, oh, this guy's supernatural. I don't know why. This guy is a huge hulking mass of murder. Why? I don't know. I mean, there's a lore story, and I think it's scarier that way, Because as soon as you start, attaching lore, then you start attaching sympathy, then you start attaching just certain preconceived notions from other films and things that we've seen. And it's really cool to not see those same things come up again, or to see people taking it in a different direction, doing something unexpected. And I'm not necessarily looking for that big scare every time. Sometimes I just genuinely want to watch a good movie, or I want to watch a movie where you can tell that people really put a lot of thought and care into creating this, that the actors were dedicated to the project, that they were into it, they were excited about the project. And a lot of times you can see that too when you look at the credits and you see a lot of like repeat names of, maybe there's actors that helped out on the crew, or there's crews that did double duty because it's a smaller, low budget project. But a lot of times when you see that, you can tell that this was a project that people were really passionate about. And I think that makes the project better in the end. And all of the kind of, advertising or anticipation that I saw for this film was all really positive, of somebody just doing something creative and new and different with a concept we're all familiar with and being excited about that. So overall, I give In a Violent Nature 4 stars, and I genuinely enjoyed it. So maybe check it out.